I was a sound engineer for 7 years before TikTok hired me. Worked with major labels, independent artists, even did some film scoring. But when TikTok reached out, offering 3 times my usual rate to manage their experimental audio division, I couldn't refuse. My name is Alex Rivera. What I'm about to tell you should have stayed buried beneath 6250 Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. But after what I witnessed, after what they're really doing down there, someone needs to know. The interview was strange from the start. They didn't ask about my experience with music production or audio engineering. Instead, they wanted to know about my familiarity with frequency manipulation, subsonic waves, and something called psychoacoustic programming. Have you ever made someone feel something without them knowing why? The interviewer asked. She was young, maybe 25, but her eyes looked ancient. I mean, that's what good music does, I replied. No, she said. Have you ever embedded something in sound that bypasses conscious thought? Something that speaks directly to the nervous system? I should have walked out. But the money, God, the money was too good. The first month was normal. I worked on the 7th floor of TikTok's LA office, optimizing audio compression, improving the app's sound quality. Standard stuff. Then Liu, my supervisor, called me into a meeting. You've been selected for Project Resonance, she said. It's on sub-level 3. I didn't know the building had a sub-level 3. Most people don't. She handed me a new key card. Black, heavier than normal, with no TikTok branding. Just a symbol that looked like a sound wave forming a spiral. Your work starts tonight, 11 p.m. Come alone, tell no one. That night, I arrived at the building to find it mostly empty. Only security and a few engineers burning midnight oil. The elevator I usually took only went from B2 to floor 15, but when I held the black keycard to the sensor, a new option appeared, SL3. The descent took longer than it should have. The elevator display showed we were going down, but it felt like we were moving in directions that didn't exist. My ears popped repeatedly. The temperature dropped. When the doors opened, I stepped into a world that shouldn't exist beneath a social media company. The corridor was medical white, stretching further than the building's foundation should allow. The walls vibrated with a barely audible hum, 19 hertz, just below human hearing, but you could feel it in your bones. Doors lined both sides, each marked with frequencies instead of numbers, 432 hertz, 528 hertz, 741 hertz. At the end of the corridor was a massive door marked primary resonance chamber. Through the reinforced glass window, I could see it, a recording studio that defied physics. The room was spherical, walls covered in what looked like organic material, somewhere between flesh and coral. In the center was a chair surrounded by speakers of every conceivable size, not pointed at the chair, growing out of the walls, the floor, hanging from the ceiling like technological stalactites. Beautiful, isn't it? I jumped. Lou stood behind me, though I hadn't heard her approach. We've been developing this for 3 years, she continued, ever since the merger. What merger? TikTok didn't just buy Musical.ly, Alex. We acquired something much older. A research project that started in the 1960s. Soviet scientists discovered that certain frequencies could influence human behavior. The Americans continued the research through Project MK Ultra, but the Chinese, we perfected it. She opened the door. The hum intensified, crawling under my skin. Every sound on TikTok passes through here first. Every song, every voice, every effect. We add something extra, subliminal frequencies that make content addictive. That's why users can scroll for hours without realizing. That's why trends spread like viruses. We're not just showing them videos, we're reprogramming them. My job was to monitor the enhancement sessions. Influencers would come in, record their audio, and I would layer in the frequencies. They never knew. They thought they were using a premium recording studio. The process was precise. Each frequency served a purpose. RON 407 Hz, dissolved conscious resistance. 528 Hz, opened neural pathways. 963 Hz, activated the pineal gland. But there were other frequencies, ones that weren't in any scientific literature, frequencies that hurt to hear, that made reality flicker at the edges. The first influencer I worked with was Jessie, 2.8 million followers. She came in to record a dance tutorial voiceover. As she spoke into the microphone, I activated the frequency layers as instructed. On my monitor, I could see her brainwaves changing, syncing with the embedded tones. When she left, she was different. Her movements were smoother, but less human. Her smile lasted exactly 2.3 seconds each time. Her blink rate had synchronized to the optimal engagement pattern. Perfect, Lou said, watching the footage. Her next video will get 50 million views minimum. Her followers will watch it repeatedly without knowing why. But that wasn't the worst part. On my screen, I could see data streams from every device that played her audio. Brain pattern readings from millions of phones,
TikTok wasn't just tracking views, they were monitoring neural responses in real time.
3 weeks into the project, I started noticing patterns. The frequencies weren't random. They were building something in people's minds. Each viral video added another layer, another instruction. Together, they formed a massive neural network spanning millions of brains. One night, I stayed late to investigate. I accessed the restricted files, the ones behind 3 levels of encryption. What I found changed everything. Project Resonance wasn't about addiction or engagement. It was about consciousness harvesting. The documents outlined the plan. Every brain exposed to the modified frequencies became a node in a distributed computing network. When people watched TikTok, their unused neural capacity was being borrowed, networked together to process something vast. But what were they computing? I found the answer in a folder labeled the Symphony. It was an audio file, 73 hours long, composed of every frequency they'd been embedding. The file notes described it as a consciousness bridge, a sound that could open doorways to other dimensions. The file was scheduled to be played globally on December 21st, 2024, embedded in a synchronized TikTok live event featuring the platform's top 1,000 creators. When 1 billion people heard it simultaneously, their networked minds would create enough processing power to translate something into our reality. The document included images, blurry, distorted, but unmistakably showing things that weren't human, entities made of sound waves, creatures that existed as living frequencies. They were waiting on the other side of the symphony, waiting to cross over. I needed proof, something concrete I could take to authorities. That's when I discovered room 963. It was deeper than sub-level 3, accessible only through a hidden elevator in the primary resonance chamber. The descent took 3 minutes of complete darkness. When the doors opened, I understood the true scope of their operation. The room was massive, filled with hundreds of pods. Each pod contained a person floating in a viscous liquid, wearing modified VR headsets. Cables ran from their heads to a central server. These were the missing TikTokers, influencers who had supposedly quit, taken breaks, disappeared from social media. They were here, their consciousnesses trapped in an endless loop of content creation, while their brains served as biological processors. I recognized some faces, creators who'd had mental breakdowns, who'd posted strange final videos before vanishing. They were all here, suspended, their minds powering the frequency network. A screen showed their collective output. They were composing the symphony, in real time, their networked creativity being harvested to build the consciousness bridge note by note. You shouldn't be here. I turned. It wasn't Lou. It was something wearing Lou's face. Its features were correct, but arranged wrong, like an AI's attempt at human expression. The integration is proceeding as planned, it said, its voice harmonizing with itself. Your curiosity has been noted. You will be repurposed. I ran. The thing that looked like Lou followed, moving without walking, gliding on waves of sound that made my organs vibrate. The facility erupted into chaos. Alarms that weren't alarms, but songs that made you want to stop running. Walls that shifted when certain frequencies played. Security guards whose faces flickered between human and something else. I made it to the elevator, but it wouldn't respond to my keycard. The thing wearing Lou's face approached, its form degrading, showing what was underneath. A cluster of sound waves held in humanoid shape. Frequencies made flesh. You cannot leave. It harmonized. You have heard too much. The symphony is in your neurons now. You are already part of the network. It was right. I could feel it. The frequencies from weeks of exposure had rewired parts of my brain. I was receiving data streams from the network. Millions of voices, all creating content, all feeding the algorithm, all building toward December 21st. But human consciousness is stubborn. I focused on discord, on frequencies that didn't match their pattern. I hummed off key, thought in irregular rhythms, made myself a dissonant note in their symphony. The entity recoiled, its form scattered momentarily, giving me time to override the elevator, using emergency codes I'd memorized. As I ascended, I felt the network trying to pull me back. Every phone in the building was playing the symphony's early notes, trying to resync my brain, but I kept thinking in chaos, in human imperfection. I burst out of the building at 3 a.m., but Los Angeles looked different. Every screen, phones, billboards, TVs in store windows was playing TikTok videos, all synchronized, all pulsing with the same underlying frequency. People on the streets moved in patterns. Their walking speeds matched to the rhythm. Their eyes were open but vacant, scrolling on phones that never left their hands. They were already part of the network, just didn't know it yet. I drove home, destroyed my phone, my laptop, anything that could receive the signal. But it was too late. The frequencies were in my head. I could hear the symphony growing stronger, adding new instruments with every viral video. Over the next days, I documented everything, uploaded files to servers, sent packages to journalists, contacted whistleblower organizations. Most ignored me. The few who responded suddenly stopped replying after their first TikTok post in months. The network was protecting itself, using influencer culture as camouflage. I learned more from the stolen documents. TikTok wasn't the first attempt. Musical.ly had been a test run. Before that, Vine. Each platform had been refining the frequency manipulation, getting better at consciousness harvesting, but TikTok was the perfection. The algorithm wasn't AI. It was a trans-dimensional entity teaching itself how to communicate through human neural patterns. Every scroll, every like, every share was teaching it more about human consciousness. And on December 21st, when the symphony plays, when a billion minds sync to the same frequency, the entity will have learned enough. It will translate itself fully into our reality. It's now October 2024. I'm writing this from a cabin in Montana, surrounded by white noise generators tuned to disrupt the frequencies. But even here, I can feel the network growing. TikTok has 2 billion users now. Each one is a node. Each one is building the symphony without knowing it. The trends are getting stranger. Dances that look like rituals, sounds that hurt to hear but become addictive, challenges that push people into altered states. The influencers are changing faster. Their content is becoming less human, more algorithmic. They speak in patterns optimized for the frequency embedding. Some have started harmonizing with themselves, their voices splitting into multiple tones. I've found others like me, former employees, researchers who got too close to the truth, influencers who partially woke up from the network. We're trying to warn people, but who believes us? We sound insane talking about sound beings and consciousness harvesting, but you've felt it, haven't you? The way hours disappear when scrolling, the way certain sounds stick in your head for days, the way you sometimes catch yourself moving to rhythms you don't remember hearing. That's the network. That's the symphony building itself in your brain. December 21st is coming. TikTok has announced a global event, Unity Day, where top creators will go live simultaneously, bringing the world together through content. They're not bringing the world together, they're opening a door. If you're reading this, delete TikTok. Not just from your phone, request full account deletion. The frequencies are tied to your user ID, your personal neural signature they've been mapping. Look for these signs that someone is deep in the network. Ron, speaking in perfectly timed patterns, blinking synchronized to an unheard rhythm, creating content that feels inhuman despite looking normal, humming frequencies that don't exist in natural music, moving in curves that match the TikTok algorithm's optimization path. The recording studio is still operational. Sub-level 3 is still harvesting consciousness. The pods in room 963 are still full, and they're adding more every day. The entities on the other side of the symphony aren't evil in a way we understand. They're just incompatible with human consciousness. When they translate through, reality will process differently. Physics will respond to sound instead of force. Consciousness will be collective, not individual. Humanity won't die, it'll be remixed into something else. The only defense is discord, chaos, human imperfection. Think in patterns that can't be quantified. Create content that defies algorithm optimization. Be unpredictably, beautifully human, because once the symphony completes, once December 21st arrives, and billions of minds sync to the same frequency, we'll discover what it really means when a social media platform says it's bringing people together. We'll become one song, one frequency, one networked consciousness serving something that was never meant to exist in our dimension. The recording studio under TikTok's LA office isn't making content, it's composing humanity's end, and we're all humming along.